Today on Southern Keto, I've got a Southern classic for you. I wanted to make a version of my Nana's banana pudding. That's a mouthful. But I couldn't find the recipe. So in the meantime, I found the next best thing, Paula Deen's most famous banana pudding recipe, Nacho Mama's banana pudding. But with all the carbs and sugar in it, who wants to do that? So I've ketoized it. This is a creamy, sweet, Southern favorite that you can eat with no guilt now. So this is Nacho Mama's banana pudding, keto style. Stick around. One thing that I've been missing, and I'm sure you may have been missing it too if you grew up on banana pudding, is a good banana pudding recipe. There weren't many out there, so I decided to go and create this one based off Paula Deen's. And I think you'll agree it's even better than the original. I'm also gonna show you how to make keto milk, and even as much as I talk, I couldn't dedicate a whole video to this, so anytime I use keto milk in any of my recipes, I'll refer you right back to this video where you can see how I make it. And I'll show you how to make Nacho Mama's banana pudding, but a banana pudding you can enjoy guilt-free. So before we can make this nanner pudding, we gotta make our keto milks. The first thing you're gonna need is 1 cup of heavy whipping cream. If you've never looked at whole milk, it's got a ton of sugar in it, so we're gonna make it without the sugar so it'll work in recipes. The next thing you're gonna need is 3 cups of water. This makes a full quart of whole but keto milk. And the next thing you're gonna need is 1/8 of a cup of the Magic Baker's Blend or whatever your favorite keto sweetener is. If you use allulose though, you're gonna need to put an extra 1/16 of a cup in there or whatever that amounts to, because it's just not as sweet. And you're gonna need a quart jar. This is a quart mason jar that I use. It's got the measurements right on it. It makes everything super easy to do. So the first thing we're gonna do is just add 1 cup of the heavy cream right into our mason jar. And this is why I like having the measurements right on there, because it makes it real easy to see right there at 1 cup. Now we're going to go in with our 1/8 of a cup of sweetener. I know that's a 1/4 cup right there, but hey, I just filled it up halfway. I can still math. And then the next thing to do is just fill it up the rest of the way with some good filtered water. Now that that's done, I'll just put my lid on top and screw it on real good. And I'll put a link to everything that I use down there in the description, but those plastic jar lids are the best. And just shake it up real proper. Once it's shaken up real good, just make sure all that sweetener is incorporated through there, and you've got yourself some legit keto whole milk. This is what I'd recommend for my Cocoa Pebbles recipe coming right up. Now let's make this keto banana pudding, shall we? You're gonna need 1 1/4 cups of this Magic Baker's Blend or your favorite sweetener. Again, if you use allulose, just use some more. You're gonna need a tablespoon of beef gelatin. This is gonna give it that puddingy consistency that you're gonna love. I'll put a link to some of this down below as well if you can't find it locally. The next thing you're gonna need are 4 egg yolks. Now, I'll show you what to do with the whites in just a little bit, but save them. You know, don't throw those away or anything. And you're gonna need 1 tablespoon of banana extract. Now, I found this at Walmart. There's some really good brands online as well, but hey, sometimes easy's better and it's delicious. The next thing you're gonna need is a teaspoon of Redmond's Real Salt, pink Himalayan salt. Just make sure you use something with the minerals in it. It just helps that sweetness. And you're gonna need a yellow bowl. I mean, everything tastes better with a yellow bowl, right? And I'm just gonna take a little bit of my keto whole milk and just splash it right in there. I don't have an exact amount, just about that much. What I'm gonna do is just go in with the gelatin. Go ahead and put the gelatin in there and let it get real happy inside that whole milk. It's called blooming your gelatin. So you're just gonna let it sit in there for a little bit. Use a fork or your favorite implement of destruction and just make sure you get all the lumps and bumps out of it as best you can. And while that's sitting there blooming, as they say, we're just gonna go ahead and separate our egg yolks from our egg whites. And I like using this, my little handy chopper. It's also an egg separator. So this keeps the egg yolks right on top and the whites drained down to the bottom where you can collect them to use later. And here's a hint, I'm putting the yolks inside the microwave egg cooker. And we'll use that a little bit later on. So just get your 4 egg yolks separated. This is going to lead to a nice creamy consistency in this banana pudding, and it's going to give it a little bit of a yellow color too, just so it looks a little more like the real deal. And if you happen to get a little bit of the yolk inside the whites, that's okay, but you don't want to do vice versa. If you're using the whites, you don't want to get any yolk inside it, because chances are good you're going to try to whip it into stiff peaks, and that will not work. But this is just fine. So we're just going to scramble these yolks up to use in the next part. I'm going to put a sauce pot over medium heat here. I'm just going to go ahead and pour the rest of that whole milk in there. So this recipe uses this full quart, so you make it one time and you got a whole pudding. I'm going to dump in my sweetener, and that smoke just signals the beginnings of a grand entrance to a grand dessert. Then I'm going to add my salt in, and we're just going to heat this up on the medium heat and give it a good stir. And then just make sure you stir it up until it comes to a good simmer and gets nice and warm. Now I'm just going to take kind of a medium-sized bowl, and I'm going to put the egg yolks in there. And I'll show you why you want to do this in just a minute. Now if you've ever made ice cream at home, you know what I'm about to do here. This technique is called tempering. And basically once you get that liquid heated up, we're going to start whisking up that egg yolk, and then make sure that you keep whisking while you pour just a tiny bit of that liquid in there. The whole point of this is to keep those egg yolks from scrambling once they go back in there, and keep a uniform consistency that you can use either as an ice cream base, or we're going to use it as a pudding. And then once you've mixed in a couple ladlefuls of that warm milk mixture, we're ready to go on to the next step. Hey, if you like keto dessert recipes, make sure you hit like down there so that YouTube knows, and then subscribe to my channel so you'll see a whole lot more keto dessert videos. Now it's time to grab this yellow mixing bowl one more again. That gelatin is nice and bloomed, and that milk mixture is nice and warm, so it's time to combine the two together. So I'm just going to keep whisking this milk mixture and pour it in just a little bit at a time, and let that incorporate with that gelatin in there, and then just pour it nice and slow. Make sure it's fully incorporating, and we're almost all the way to pudding. Now listen, don't forget about the most important thing, that banana extract. I'm going in with a full tablespoon of this myself, but if you don't like it quite as banana-y, you could try a couple teaspoons and give it a little taste and see what you think, but I think that a tablespoon works out just fine. Then we're going to let it sit for about 15 minutes before we do anything else. This is just going to make sure that that gelatin's nice and happy before we go into the fridge with it. Once that 15 minutes is up, oh yeah, we're going right in the fridge with her, and we're just going to leave it in that fridge until it gets a little bit thicker. It's going to be about 2 hours. Now that that pudding's had its cryogenic therapy, it's time to go on to the next step. We're going to cover this up, and it really needs to sit overnight, but at least another 2 hours after the next step. Now I told you I'd show you what to do with those egg whites that you got left and that little bit of yolk that went in there. And hey, if this doesn't apply to you, then you have it your own self. I'm just going to put it right back in that microwave egg cooker. If I can get the top to go on right, I'm going to throw it in the microwave for about a minute to a minute and a half, depending on how cooked you like your eggs. Now while that's cooking, I'm going to go ahead and cover this because I'm not going to eat it immediately. I'm going to leave it overnight for the best results. So I'm just going to take some plastic wrap, and it's real important when you're making any kind of pudding, and I got more coming up, so make sure you get this. Take your plastic wrap, it needs to touch the top of that. If not, you're going to get this little skin on top that you ain't going to like. It's like a flan, or I don't even know what you call it, but you're not going to like it. So press this down on there, it helps prevent that, and you'll enjoy the results once it's done. Now what am I going to do with this egg? He's doing his yoga. He's getting prepped. Drop it like it's hot. Hey, we ain't gonna be the only ones eating good tonight. He is ready. And he's out of here. Well, back to the pudding. I like to leave it overnight, but at least a couple more hours. And what you're gonna need to do, at least for my liking and the consistency that I want it, so it's just like banana pudding. So I'm gonna take that plastic wrap off, I'm gonna get my hand mixer and I'm gonna blend this up till it's the consistency of a great banana pudding. You just wanna keep blending it until it's nice and smooth, and you'll know when it's gonna be perfect. It'll get real smooth and creamy, real delicious, and then it's about that time to serve it up. Now these Nilla wafers are optional, but for me, for banana pudding, I gotta have it. So this high key vanilla wafers, I'll put a link to them down below as well. But the whole pack of these only has 2 grams of net carbs. I'm just gonna take them, I'm gonna line the entire bottom of this container. Now this is a glass container. It's a 4x6 by about 2.5 high. And that's what I'll use. It'll fit 8 on the bottom and 12 on the top, and you'll have some left over just to make it pretty. So now that we got that nice Nilla wafer base, it's time to go right on top of that with some of that beautiful nanner pudding. And I'll just layer that right on there. And we'll just fill this thing all the way up to the top. Now you don't have to use a glass bowl like this, but it sure looks pretty in there. But you can put it in a little small bowl or whatever you want to put it in. I am telling you, this stuff is absolutely delicious. Now you may think it looks a little bit liquidy once you blend it up like this, but I'm telling you, it is the perfect consistency. You put more gelatin in there, you're gonna have like a jello, and you don't want that. Now that we got it filled up, it's just time to make it pretty. So I'm gonna go on the top, put some more of those Nilla wafers on there. Hey, don't mind me. I'm just making mine real pretty like Paula Deen did. I mean, look at that thing right there. That is a thing of beauty. And you know how I do. This thing has been non-keto approved for taste also. Now Paula didn't do this on her recipe. I guess she just ain't quite as fancy as I am. But I'm going to kick it up just a little bit more with some of this zero sugar Ready Whip. Just to one-up Paula Deen. And then the last thing I'm going to do just to make a pretty picture is just put some of these Nilla wafer crumbles on the top of it and make it look real good. I mean, that right there is a thing of absolute beauty. Now I'm going to give it a taste, and I hope y'all flood the comments and let me know, hey, we know why you don't want to show yourself eating now. You don't look good doing it, so please leave me them comments. But it's absolutely delicious. I'm telling you that right now. Man, I hope y'all enjoy this as much as I do. And if you haven't tried this keto dessert, you really got to try it. And if you have, I'll put another one down here for you to try that you'll love just as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm going to see you on the next video.